Hello everyone, and welcome to your first geometry screencast. So this worksheet we got in class, I'm going to go through the word that the definition goes with, and then tomorrow you guys are going to work in groups to figure out a picture, and then we're going to talk about the notation for all of these. So our first word is an undefined term in geometry. It is something that names a location and has no size. This is a point. Another undefined term in geometry, it is a straight path that has no thickness and extends forever. Key part of this is forever, so it's going to go forever in both directions. This is a line. A two-dimensional flat surface that extends, again, forever. This we call a plane. Now, there are two ways that we can determine a plane. The most common that we might use is three non-collinear points. And what non-collinear means, non, the prefix we know kind of means like not. We typically associate with like together, and we see the word line in here. So what non-collinear means is that there are points that are not on the same line. You can draw a line between any 2 points, however that third point needs to be not on that line, which gives us our other way of determining a plane, which is a line and a point not on that line. Alright, the next word we're going to look at is a part of a line that starts at an endpoint and extends forever in one direction. So no longer are we going to go forever in both directions. We're going to be looking at only going forever in one direction. So we call this a ray. So again, it's going forever in one direction only. And that direction is going to be very important for when we come to naming. A part of a line consisting of 2 endpoints and all the points in between them. So, because we've got those 2 endpoints, we're talking about a line segment. The word segment typically means piece, so we have a piece of a line. A figure formed by 2 rays, so we know ray has a point, goes forever in one direction, with a common endpoint. We call this an angle. 2 angles that have the same measure, and it can really be angles or segments. We're just going to use this definition to help us define the word congruent. So it can be angles, it can be segments. Later on it can be shapes. Really any 2 items, or even more than 2 items, that have the same exact measure and really the same kind of qualities as the other. Speaking of angles, there are a couple different ways of classifying an angle. If an angle has a measure that is greater than 0 but less than 90, we call that an acute angle. If we're more than 90 but less than 180, we call that an obtuse angle. And then a 180 degrees, no more, no less, we call that a straight angle. Lines in the same plane that do not intersect are called parallel lines. So we see the word line, so extending forever. Plane also extends forever. So some of these vocab words will be critical in understanding what other vocab terms are. The word that goes with the definition of intersecting to form 90-degree angles, which we can also call right angles for the 90-degree angle part. So any two lines, segments, rays, any combination thereof, if they're intersecting to form 90-degree angles, we would classify them as being perpendicular. If there are two angles that share a common vertex and a common side, we would say that those angles are adjacent. And the key word in the next definition is going to be sum. So if two angles whose measures have a sum of 90 degrees as opposed to one single angle that has 90 degrees, we would call that angle, the pair of angles, complementary. Usually abbreviated comp. Again, we have sum. So if we have two angles whose sum is 180 degrees, we call those supplementary angles. Often abbreviated sup, either with one P or two, doesn't usually matter. The non-adjacent angles, so not touching angles, formed by two intersecting lines, we call those vertical angles. We'll make sure that we talk about the picture in class, but those are also, sometimes people like to call them the kissing angles. That might give you an indication of kind of what they might be looking like, but those are our vertical angles. A pair of adjacent angles, so touching angles, whose non-common sides are opposite rays, we call those a linear pair. Linear because their non-common sides make a line, so they're going in completely opposite directions. And then we do have that common ray in the middle, so that might kind of help gear some thoughts as to what that might look like. The point that divides a segment into two congruent segments, so we see that word congruent again, so of equal measure or of equal length, we call that a midpoint. Two more. A line perpendicular to a segment at the segment's midpoint is called a perpendicular bisector because it's both perpendicular and it's going to the midpoint, which bisects, cut into two, our segment. And our last definition is a set of points in a plane that are a fixed distance from a given point. Kind of a weird way to describe it, but this is a circle. Every point on that circle is the same distance away from the center. And then if something is a fixed distance, a bunch of points that are all the same distance away from a point, in this case all the points in a circle are the same distance away from that center, we could say that they are equidistant. We'll see that word down the line, but it kind of comes into play nicely with circles. So that's all the vocab I have for you today. Like I said, we will be looking at these a little bit more in class and also practice and start drawing some of these things. So I'll see you then.